It's your boy, Meet Kevin, and I'm on a plane heading to Chicago because we're about to do the real estate investing crash course on Saturday. So what I thought is, hey, if we're going to be talking about homeownership on Saturday, why not warm up and talk about whether or not a house is an investment or a liability? And is there an underlying reason a house would actually be an investment versus a liability that's different from the fact that it's just a house? That is, what is it that you're doing that makes it a liability or an investment? Let's talk about it. The first thing you want to keep in mind when you're asking yourself, is a house an investment or is it a liability? Or when you're talking to people that say a house is a liability, ask yourself, what is their background? A lot of fund managers and investment advisors will bag on a single family house, let's say, or even a duplex or a small deal because it takes away a down payment that could otherwise be invested with them. Most people, when they buy real estate, they spend their money on a down payment, they got some money for fix-up, and they're tapped for a while, so they're not investing clients anymore. So consider that source. Now take it a step further. When other people say, oh, well, houses are liabilities, what kind of investing background and experience do they actually have? A lot of people that say a house is a liability are people who actually lost houses in 2008 because they ended up with terrible variable rate financing, ninja loans, no doc loans, basically these loans that were really, really bad and nobody should have gotten them in the first place. Today, we're in a totally different environment. We have these 30-year fixed rate loans, where as long as you make the payment for 30 years, the house is fully paid off and it's yours. So ask yourself, was somebody jaded because they got hurt in a recession? Or did they know somebody that got hurt in the last recession? And perhaps they didn't necessarily follow the safe principles of buying under market value real estate and making sure that the property will rent for more than what your payment is if you ever go rent it out. If they're not following those steps, the odds are that's probably why they ended up getting hurt. Unfortunately, we just end up hearing the buzzwords that, oh, house is a liability. You don't want to see what happened in the recession. You don't want that to happen to you, do you? It's really, at that point, you should be peeling back the layer and going, actually, you know what, tell me, why do you say that? Oh, well, I knew somebody who lost a home. Really? Why'd they lose their home? Well, they were a teacher and they were making $50,000 a year and they had $1 million house loan and you know, when the market fell, they couldn't refinance and they lost their home. And then all of a sudden logic should hit in. You go, oh, wow, a teacher had $1 million house loan? Where's that logic? And all of a sudden you can actually kind of dispel some of the myths. Here's another one. People will say a house is a liability because they'll hook up with contractors. I'm not trying to bag on the construction industry here at all, but they'll hook up with contractors that get really excited about doing remodeling projects, and they'll spend $200,000 remodeling a $500,000 house with a new $60,000 kitchen, Viking appliances, bamboo floors, marble countertops, fancy tiling in the bathroom, crown molding this, disappearing baseboards that. Guess what? All of that crap is butter, as in it is a liability, because when you put that stuff in, you're usually not going to recoup that in sale value. Maybe you'll recoup like 30 cents on the dollar, which isn't really a good investment, and you're usually not going to get more money in rent for that property relative to everybody else that just has good paint and carpet and it's move-in ready. Notice how most apartment complexes have really basic kitchens, basic carpet, maybe they got linoleum or laminate throughout the entire property. They're usually not crazy overdone unless you're in like a vacation destination.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Please take a moment and smash that like button.
Now, here's another reason you hear people bag on residential real estate and say, you know, it's not a good investment because, you know, if you're going to turn around and rent out the property, you're just one eviction away from bankruptcy. And I think it really is a mischaracterization of how investing in real estate works. First of all, a very, very small percentage of qualified tenants actually end up having to be evicted. And how do you qualify a tenant, you might ask? Well, we happen to be property managers. We happen to have done this for over 10 years, and we manage our own rentals. We've never had an eviction. And knock on wood, I don't actually think there's any wood in this plane, but knock on wood when I land, we don't have an eviction anytime soon. But every time we properly screen our tenants by making sure we don't fall victim to the movie Pacific Heights, where the guy comes in, flashes the cash, says, come on, rent to me. You don't need to check my credit credit. Come on, you don't need to check my references or my employment. I got the cash right here, just give me the keys. It's exactly how people get hurt. And I think a lot of those bad experiences are actually motivated by people that think they can manage real estate themselves, that they don't need a professional, and it's almost like the same thing that Abe Lincoln said when he was still alive. Person that represents themselves in court as a fool for a client. Well, the same is true in property management. There's a reason property managers charge 8 to 10%. Because it's not easy to find the best tenants and to keep them happy and to make sure everything goes smoothly. But it can be done, and we do it regularly. And keep in mind, all of that is factored into a deal before you buy it. You should know, okay, if market rent's $2,400, I'm not going to try to rent out a house for $2,600 because I probably will just get a crappy tenant that's being rejected everywhere else. And don't use the Zillow estimates either. They're often wrong in many ways. Don't sue me, bro. Now, here's the other thing I hear, and this is, I hate to say it, but I'm just going to be blunt here. It's just pure laziness. You hear people say all the time, well, I want the comfort that if something breaks, I can just call the landlord. Well, I have that same comfort with all of the real estate I own, except I just put aside $200 every single month and wait for something to break. And then if something breaks, I get to choose who the plumber is, how it gets replaced. If I want to do something myself, I could do it to save money. I'm not at the whim of some landlord who's going to blow me off for weeks because it ain't a concierge service, or they're going to end up doing a half job or putting in some low quality crap. I'm not at that whim. I take control. I personally like taking control because the number one way to build wealth is not trying to figure out how to get passive income tomorrow. It's building assets. And when you control assets like real estate that go up in value over the long run, as long as you hold for the long run, you end up coming out ahead. See, another big thing that people say is, oh my gosh, like for example, I saw this on Instagram the other day. People will go, oh, well, if you buy a house for $100,000 and 10 years later you sell it for $125,000, you're going to lose money because of repairs and selling costs and all this. And people make these analyses usually with inflated repair costs, inflated selling costs, and the bottom line is, you don't have to sell your real estate. You could hold it nearly forever. I usually recommend holding real estate for at least 27 and a half years so you can take advantage of some amazing tax loopholes to never have to pay taxes or capital gains on your real estate. All of a sudden at that point, you're the one who's laughing at everybody else going, oh, house is a liability. 27 and a half years later, you're like, all right, I'm rich in Tahiti. Now, that does bring up the note that I'll oftentimes get comments from people going, oh, well, I don't want to be 60 and rich. And it's just another mischaracterization. You can build a lot of wealth in real estate as you're building your portfolio. Cash flows go up, equity positions go up, and you have a lot of opportunities to do a lot with the assets you have control over. You're not the whim of some landlord deciding, time to evict ya, time for a rent increase. Here are the actual 3 reasons a house is a liability. Number 1, if you're short-term focused, house is a liability. It's certainly not an anchor because you can always rent out a property and move, but there are a lot of TV commercials or financial advice that says, oh, you know what, you shouldn't buy a house because what if you want to move in 3 years? Well, you know what I say to that? No problem. I pack my bags and I move and I hand over the property to a property manager. I know I bought a good deal because that's what I do. I buy wedge deals and I teach people how to buy wedge deals in my in-person events or in my real estate investing course, which you can take online. It's over 340 lectures that teach you everything I know about real estate investing on a silver platter. And even if there's something I was missing, you can join me in our private live streams and I will personally help you answer those questions. So to me, if you're going to have that short-term mindset, yeah, you know what? A house is going to be a liability. In fact, a lot of clients come to me and they're like, Kevin, I want to sell. I go, why would you do that? As soon as you sell, you're giving away 7 to 8% of the market value that you've built. Why don't you wait? Keep it for the long term. Build some more net worth in the property so it's not so much of a big hit. Build some more cash flow in the property. Why sell if you don't have to sell? As long as you have cash flowing real estate, it's an opportunity for you to build wealth, to tax benefits, rent increases, real estate appreciation, all these things combined make real estate an incredible investment. See, I'll actually get college students that'll send me messages on Instagram, and they're like, hey, I'm 20, I'm 21, I've got some money saved up, I'm thinking about buying, a cheap house in my college area or a cheap condo and then house hacking it, but I'm worried that I have to sell it after I move and leave this college town. I'm like, why would you do that? Keep it. When it's time to move, turn it over to a property manager and have them rent it out for you. Because guess what you get to do while you're in college? Not only do you get to house hack it and rent it out to the roommates of your choosing, but you get to start interviewing and finding out who the best local property managers are. One of the first things we talk about in the real estate investing course is exactly how to not only budget properly to do this, but how to develop your circle of influence that's actually going to help you make these deals happen. Your realtor, your manager, your lender, and how to find them. Now, the second reason a house might be a liability for you is if you're not aware of basic finance. And this is something I try to drill into everybody in the real estate investing course. Here's an example. I had somebody in our private Discord come to me and say, hey, I need to put in a new heating unit in my property. And that heating unit, they got a quote for $4,500 at 0% interest. And they thought, this is a great deal because it's 0% interest and I could pay this off pretty soon. Well, problem is, I used to be a licensed contractor, and I can tell you, that furnace is probably worth about $2,500, and the extra $2,000 are profit to the financing company that's doing the 0% interest loan, and another $1,000 profit to the vendor. Pay cash for these things. That's the kind of financing mindset I teach, and that's how, unfortunately, a lot of homeowners get taken advantage of, is not being aware of basically the tricks of the trade and surrounding yourself with the professionals that are really going to be able to help save you thousands of dollars. So if you're fearful of surrounding yourself with knowledgeable people, yeah, maybe real estate's not for you at that point. The last actual reason housing can be a liability is if you're treating it as a way to build a lifestyle. If you're trying to buy a property to show off the view you have and the big garage you have where you can park your fancy cars and you got all this square footage and you remodel this kitchen and it's beautiful and you're trying to show it off to everybody, then real estate is a liability for you because it's a bad return on investment to spend money on those things that don't matter. They're not going to generate you more rental value. It's kind of like what we talked about earlier in the video. This is exactly why when we buy real estate, like the house that we're living in right now, we actually found a pretty move-in ready house off market, got it for an under market value deal, and guess what? We didn't remodel the bathrooms, the kitchen, the carpet, the paint. We just kept everything as is. And as soon as we're ready to move, we'll get it rent ready, and that'll be a basic paint job and some basic fixes, and we'll move on. We're not trying to finance a show-offy lifestyle with our house. If you're a real estate agent and want to learn how to blow your clients' minds so you can close some more deals, I've also got a real estate agent course for you. And keep in mind where I'll be next. I'll be in Chicago this Saturday, July 13th. After that, we'll be in Austin, Seattle, San Francisco, Miami, and next year we've got places like Nashville coming up, we've got Atlanta coming up, we've got Philadelphia and LA coming up, so we're looking forward to it. Can't wait to see you. Thanks so much, and always feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at MeetKevin.